So we're starting now Masechet Sanhedrin. This is class number 3. We're on Daf Sadi Amud Bet. For those of you following at home, 4 lines from the bottom of the page. Sha'alat Cleopatra. So you know the Chachamim, they were intelligent, highly intelligent, and not just highly intelligent, they were respected by the Gentiles as highly intelligent, right? And we have many cases in the Gemara where there is a conversation between a particular Chacham and a well-known personage. The Gemara says that there was a discussion between the Jewish Chachamim and the Greek philosophers about certain scientific matters, right? So here we're going to have a conversation that took place between Queen Cleopatra. You all heard of Cleopatra, and Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir was one of the famous Tanaim, right? Rabbi Meir was the Tana. He was a student of Rabbi Akiva, and he lived in Israel in the days of the Second Temple. At the end, it was already after the destruction. So there was like the Roman occupation in Israel. So during this time, there was relationships, more relationships and questions between the Romans and the Jewish people. So Cleopatra, apparently he was on a trip to Rome, or to Egypt rather, and in one of these trips, she engages him in a conversation. They were always amazed at the wisdom of the Jewish Chachamim. So Sha'ala Cleopatra Malketat Rabbi Meir. So Cleopatra goes to Rabbi Meir and she asks him the following question. Amra, she says, Yadana Yechayeshach. I know that according to the Jewish belief, the dead people will come back, right? That's what you believe in, right? I know that and I respect it, but I have a question about that. I want to show you this pasuk in Tehillim. There's a whole bunch of Tehillims right here. Bring them out. I want you to get out the books of Tehillim. I want you to see this beautiful pasuk that discusses what's going to happen in the future days. Because we always talk about Techiyat HaMetim. So what do you understand when you hear about Techiyat HaMetim? You say, oh, the dead will come back and come back to life. But you don't understand. If the dead are coming back to life, it's because the nature of the world is changing. Meaning, it's not just the dead that are coming back to life. The entire ecosystem, all the agriculture will change. So this pasuk that I'm going to read to you now, if you go to page 145, you'll see the pasuk. And it describes what's going to happen in the future days, right? In the future days when the Beit HaMikdash is built, and there's going to be tremendous fecundity in the land, wealth beyond belief. So this pasuk describes it, okay? Give me a moment. Let me just find the pasuk myself. I'm sorry, one page over. Go to page 146, the top of the page, right? This whole Mizmor is describing what's going to happen, how the Mashiach is going to come, and the Mashiach is going to make a war against all the Goyim and capture the nations of the world. The pasuk says, "Ve'yerd miyam ad yam." The Mashiach would go from one ocean to the other ocean. Okay, that's not what we're studying now. What we are studying is the natural changes to the land. So page 146, the top, it says, "Yehi fasad bar ba'ares." A person is going to take a fistful of grain. Now, right now, if I take a fistful of grain and I throw it on the ground, nothing's going to happen because, you have to plow the ground, right? You have to take care of it, right? I have a fistful of wheat. I put it in the ground. Okay, maybe it'll grow. If I'm in Israel, the ground there is very fertile. I think if you put it here in Brooklyn, it probably won't grow. Maybe it will. I don't know. But in the Yemot HaMashiach, a person will take one fistful of grain. He'll throw it in the land. Berosh Harim. He can even be on the highest mountains. And usually when you go to the top of the mountain, the air is thin. It's not good for growing wheat. The wheat, you need a plain, right? You need the plain, so it's very good, right? You have the flat land, and then when it rains in a very consistent way. You don't have like sudden flooding. Here in the mountains, it's it's very windy. There's you can't grow wheat on the top of the mountain. But in Yemot HaMashiach, there's going to be such wealth to the land that you're going to take a fistful of grain, you're going to be on the top of the mountain, you're going to throw it on the ground, Yira'ash kalevanon priyo. This is unbelievable. You ever go to a forest? Anybody here do hiking? So when you go hiking in the forest and it's quiet, but then you hear the wind blowing, and you hear it moving through the top of the trees, right? It's a beautiful feeling. You probably experience that. I do hiking in Vermont, in New Hampshire, and when suddenly it's windy, you remember hiking, and you okay. There's going to be such wealth to this fistful of wheat. It's going to grow so tall that it's going to be like a forest, and you're going to hear the wind blowing through the wheat as you're walking on this mountain. This is showing you how in the days of Techiyat HaMetim, it's not just that we will come back to life, but the whole ecosystem of the world will change, right? Yahi fisad bar ba'ares berosh harim, yir'ash kal Lebanon piryo. The wheat will make noise like the forests of Lebanon. V'yasisu me'ir ka'esev ha'ares. And people will just leave their houses. They would go right outside the city, and they will be growing like the same way right now when you walk to the subway, you have weeds all over the place, you have different things, right? So it's going to be this crazy amount of wheat growing. I mean, there's going to be no famine anymore. Famine will be solved. There'll be so much wheat in the world. So there's going to be a transformation in the planet in Yemot HaMashiach. Okay, so that's what this is saying. So Cleopatra was aware of this. Getting back now to the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom of the page. So she says, I know that the dead are going to come back to life. Now when it says that people, that the wheat will sprout out from the land like the weeds come from the earth, nowadays, she takes that as an allusion for Techiyat HaMetim. It's not talking about the wheat. She understands it, and correctly so. It's an allusion to the fact that people will come back to life. Because what do you have outside the city? You don't have the Bet Kevarot inside the city because the Kohanim are Tameim, so you have the graveyard outside the city. So it's also an allusion to the fact that the people are going to come back to life like a plant. So the same way a plant suddenly sprouts out from the ground, people are going to come back to life, Techiyat HaMetim. So that I'm aware of. All this, Cleopatra is affirming as correct. Ella, here's my question. Keshehen omedim, when they come back to life, omedin arumin, when they come back to life, are they going to be fully dressed, or are they going to be naked? That's what she's interested in, Cleopatra. How are they going to come back to life? When a baby is born, the baby technically isn't naked because it has like an embryonic sac, right? When a baby comes out of the mommy's womb, right, it has a kind of like a sac, and then, right? How is it going to be in the days of Techiyat HaMetim, right? So he says as follows. I'm going to give you a proof from wheat. I'm going to answer your question by looking at wheat. Now imagine you take 1 grain of wheat. Now the grain of wheat is naked, right? Just 1 grain by itself, and you put it in the earth. Yosef b'kamal when the wheat comes out, how does it come out? So you know how it comes out. It comes up, there's a stalk. Inside the stalk, there's these prickly growths. Under that, there's like shell. Under the shell, there's a further shell. And then you finally get into the wheat. So it's all covered up. He says, if Hashem can take this wheat and can make it come out of the ground fully dressed, so to speak, Sadiqim, the pious, Shenikbarim belvushem, when the pious are buried, they're buried with the Tachlich HaMetim, with the linen cloth. That's how we bury the dead. Of course, that when Hashem brings back the Sadiqim, He's not going to bring them back naked. He's going to bring them back with the special clothing. Now, how that clothing is going to look, how it's going to be, I don't know. I know what the Gemara says, and the Gemara is saying, don't worry. God controls the biological world to the smallest detail, and He will see to it that when these Sadiqim, when we come back to life, in Yemot HaMashiach, after Yemot HaMashiach, you can sit next, right, after Yemot HaMashiach, that we will be fully clothed. Yes, young man. And you want to sit next to me because you have a Gemara? Okay, you sit next to him. Okay.
Are only Tzadikim being brought back with Techiyat HaMetim?
Right.
Only Tzadikim. Okay.
Meaning people who follow the Torah.
So that means that everyone.
People who follow the Torah, they'll be brought back. We're going to see later on, there are some people, we saw in the previous thing, we said, Elu Shem En Lahem Chelek L'Olam Haba. So for example, a person doesn't have Chelek L'Olam Haba, he also doesn't have Chelek in Techiyat HaMetim, right? Because normally we say the Neshama lives forever. But if a person loses his Olam Haba, that means that when he dies, the Pasuk says, Hikaret Tikaret HaNefesh Ha'avon Haba. So what does it mean? Hikaret Tikaret. So the soul is cut off. So the Chachamim say, Hikaret L'Olam Hazeh, it's going to be cut off from this world. Tikaret le'olam haba, and it's going to be cut off from the world to come. So a person on whom the pasuk says Hikaret, that person is not going to have to his soul is dead. But most people, you follow the Torah, you follow the mitzvot, you're going to be zochet tehayat metim. Any other question? Yes, sir.
Is it going to be like modern era when it happens? So people that are coming back are going to be from hundreds of years ago, coming to this new advanced world that we're in today. Is that?
It's going to be unbelievable because really, how are you going to explain? Like even just think of it, you're gonna have people coming back from 1,000, from 2,000, from 3,000 years ago. The days Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu was the year 2448. He was born, or 2449. Either way, the machlokah for 1 year. And today we're the year 5764. So it's going to be unbelievable. Right? It's how's that going to work? I'm sorry, 5784. Right? So Tafshin Pedalit. So it's going to be how is that wisdom? How are they going to? So God is going to have to somehow reprogram these people's minds so that when they wake up and they live in this, giant metropolises. Because think about it. Right now we have cities. How many people do you have living in New York? 5 million, 6 million? 6 million, okay. Now imagine you have all of Israel today, 7 million people, more or less, right? Maybe actually 9 million. Okay, all of Israel, let's say 9 million people. Now imagine you suddenly have, all these people coming back to life, everybody coming back. Where's there going to be room? So the metropolises, there's going to be like tens of millions of people. So you're going to build these huge cities, right? With roads that can allow access for everybody, with infrastructure. How are they going to understand that? So there's going to be a reprogramming of the mind, so that when they come back, they'll be able to perceive the world intelligently, right? So that's part of the wonder of Tehiyat HaMetim. The same way God is going to bring them back to life, He's going to give them minds that can somehow function within a modern metropolis, and that's part of the wonder of Tehiyat HaMetim. So you're going to have agriculture, food for everybody, because you say Tehiyat HaMetim, how are they going to feed all these people? So now we know how they're going to feed all the people. Yehi fasad bar ba'ares, a beautiful pasuk. Yes, sir.
Isn't Tehiyat HaMetim only for a few minutes and then they go back?
No. So Tehiyat HaMetim, first of all, it's a good question. What Harambam says, Harambam wrote a letter called Igeret Tehiyat HaMetim, where he describes it. And he says that in the days of Tehiyat HaMetim, mankind will revert to the pre-Noahide days when people lived centuries. So the people who come back to life will live centuries. And Rambam says they'll have children and grandchildren, and it's going to be like an entire rejuvenation of humanity, right? So no, it's not just a few minutes. But what that means, what that midrash means, is that the world is going to be so beautiful. It's going to be like, all time will feel like it's condensed. It's going to be like you're living in a story, right? And not like today where like there's so many things every day. You wake up, what just happened in Israel? Oh my gosh, what do these people demonstrate? They demonstrate like you go crazy. The world is going to be so beautiful that time will feel like it's condensed. It's just going to be such a feeling of life and happiness, right?
Also, for example, let's say like Esav, is he gonna like?
No. So
Even
Esav,
though he's the son of-
because Esav chose, he didn't choose to be a good person. And his grandson, his son was Eliphaz, and the son of Eliphaz, he had many sons, Esav. His grandson was Amalek. Right? So bad news for Esav. I don't think he's coming back unless he's coming back to be punished. We said in the previous classes that Hashem will bring back some of the Reshaim, not because we want to give them life, we want to punish them. The pasuk says, there's going to be some of these Reshaim, maybe Hitler, that we bring him back to life, we hold him on trial, and people are going to see these people, like those Reshaim, it says that they're going to be in an eternal state of suffering for what they did. Can you imagine Hitler? He killed 6 million people. You imagine the cruelty? Forget Hitler. The Hamas terrorists, that they just did what they did. You think it's enough that Israel went and they shot them dead or they caught them? And I don't know what, it's not enough.
Not true justice.
It's not true justice. You can't. See, some people have to be brought back to life and they're going to be put on trial and they're going to be punished. Hashem will punish them. It's not up to us. It's up to Hashem. Hashem will do what Hashem wants to do. So He's going to bring it back, right?
Is there an expiration on Mashiach? And that said it's going to be perpetual.
Oh, so that's a great question. We believe that when the Mashiach comes, He's going to build a third Beit HaMikdash.
Right.
The third Beit HaMikdash will be perpetual. That's it. Now we're not going to make the same mistakes we made. We're not going to go back to Avodah Zarah like we did. We're not going to go back to Sinat Hinam, hatred. It's going to be a situation where we finally would have learned our lesson. You understand? And it would be perpetual, right? So that's what this mizmor. It's a beautiful mizmor. It's Perek Ayin Gimel, Ayin Bet, Perek Ayin Bet. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful mizmor. Okay. So anyway, so that's the answer to that. Rabbi Meir gives to Cleopatra. Okay. Another similar incident. Amar leKesal leRabban Gamliel. So Rabban Gamliel, he was a Rosh Yeshiva of Yavne. He was the head of the Jewish court in Yavne. Also, after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And he once was visiting Rome. Sometimes they wanted to have relationships with Rome. The same way, so let's say now we have some anti-Semitism, right? So we're going to have somebody go visit Mayor Eric Adams, say, listen, this can't continue, we got to do something about it. So the Hachamim used to have relationships with the Roman politicians. So once Rabban Gamliel was visiting the Roman Caesar, and he says as follows. So the Caesar Rabban Gamliel says, can I talk religion to you? He says, sure, of course. What do you want? Well, what do you want to ask me? Ask me anything. Amnitu teshachve hayeh. You people believe, you Jewish people believe, says the Caesar to Rabban Gamliel, that the dead people come back to life. But it doesn't make sense. If you open up a grave of a person, you look at the person, he turns into a dust. Can dust come back to life? Can dust turn into a living creature? That's the question that the Caesar asked Rabban Gamliel. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam shekol na'im b'ro. Amen. Amna le Barte. Shavke. The daughter of the Caesar was there. She was a very intelligent young lady. And she told Rabban Gamliel, I'm going to answer this question. You don't have to answer. I'm going to answer. I want to give the answer, Daddy. Okay, can I answer it? You ask a question, I want to answer it. So she says as follows. Oh, yeah, so you're going to have to go, you're going to have to turn some pages. It's a little annoying. You have the place here, right? Yeah, but yeah.
I just kept turning.
Yeah.
It's all the same page.
Okay, you have it there? Good, perfect. All right, show this. Make sure he has his place.
91A.
Right. It's very confusing. I'm going to try to get more books next week, see if we can do it. Belina. All right. So she says, Daddy, I want to answer the question. Shavke. Leave him. Imagine we have two people who they know how to make pottery. They know how to make, clay dishes, bowls, right? Pottery makers. One person, he knows how to create things from water. Another person creates stuff from teeth. Now, how do you make pottery? You make pottery from teeth, from ceramic, right? You make ceramic from, clay, right? Clay. The other guy makes the ceramic from water. Who is more praiseworthy? The one who can take water and turn it into a utensil, or the one who can take the clay and turn it into a utensil? Amala, the father answered his daughter. The Caesar is answering the princess. Of course, obviously, if you can take water and turn it into a utensil, that's like miraculous. How can you take water and turn it into a utensil? Amrale minamayim sar minatid lo kol sheken. So she says, when God created the world, at the beginning, the pasuk says that the world was mine. Veruach Elohim merachefet al penei hamayim. The wind of God was blowing above the water. The very, very, very beginning, right? And then what does God do? God separates the water. He separates the water above the heaven, the water below the heaven, and then from the water below the heaven he creates earth, and then from that he creates man. So she said, if God can create from water, he can create all of the cosmos, including man. So you think that God has a problem creating man from soil? If he can create the cosmos and man from water, of course he can create man from soil. That's what the daughter answers her father. And Rabban Gamliel accepted the answer. He said, you're right, good thing. Another similar incident. So what does that mean? What it means is as follows. Our minds, we can conceive of a world where reality exists. And within the matrix of reality, we can understand how there are some things that happen, some things more wonderful than others, some things that are incredible. And then we have some questions. How can God turn the staff into a snake? How can God turn the water into blood? How can God make it so there's makat bechorot? And that's a difficulty we have because we think within the matrix of reality that we exist in. But here's the thing. God doesn't exist in this matrix, right? God was able to take water, right, and fashion the entire cosmos from water. And there's no natural explanation for how water can turn into the cosmos, right? And where did the water come from? Well, there was nothing before the water. God created the water. So God created the entire matrix that we exist in. We call this reality. We call this we exist. Where does existence come from? God created existence. So the deep meaning is God who created existence has no problem fashioning whatever is within that thing that we call existence. It's his. He has complete dominion over it, right? When God created the world, he created it as he wanted to create it. He has complete dominion because there was nothing above God, right? God doesn't exist in the world. Right? People say, oh, where's God? God exists in the world. No, he doesn't exist in the world. God is the reason for existence. There was God before there was existence. So it's not that God exists in the world as we exist in the world. God's existence is above. It's, if anything, you can say that we are within the matrix of God's existence. It's not that God is within our existence. We're somehow within his. That's what we say in the. We are within his existence. That's what do we say in Keter of Musa? Ayeh mekom kevodo leha'ariso. Where is the place that I can experience the glory of God so that I can praise him? So where is it? Ayeh. I said, God, it's not in space, right? It's hard to say in space. So ayeh mekom kevodo leha'ariso. So the greatest praise of God is to be aware of that question. Where? Where is he? That's the praise of God. When you realize he doesn't exist, like these things exist here. These are here. They're in my hand. It's a definite point in space, a definite point in time. He doesn't exist in space or time. His existence surpasses that. You understand? So the point of Rabban Gamliel and the daughter of the Caesar was a very sophisticated point. You can't ask this question against God because he fashioned existence. So it's all within his purview to do whatever he wants to do. So yeah, he can bring back man from soil. All right? Questions on that? Good. All right. What time is it, by the way? I don't know. Okay, good. We have a half hour. Beautiful. We're going to cover some good ground now. Rabbi Ishmael brings a different, in the Bet Midrash of Rabbi Ishmael, they bring a different analogy to explain this. Again, how can we have Tefiyat HaMetim? I say like this. Now imagine you have a glass utensil. How do you make a glass utensil? I don't know how they do it today, but back then, Israel was famous for making glass, in the days of the Second Temple. So in order to make a glass utensil, you have to boil the sand, right? Who said sand, right? And then there's a thing that you blow into it, and somehow it shapes it, right? To shape it. So it's like molten, it's liquid, and then you blow it, and it comes out into a certain shape. So it says as follows. Now, when you make the glass utensil, it's a human being that blows into the glass, which fashions it. And yet, what happens if a glass breaks? So what do you do with the glass? Now today you throw it to the garbage. Back then, they wouldn't take it and throw it to the garbage. They would take it back to the glass manufacturer. He would put it in the fire, melt it, and make a new utensil from the broken glass. Right? That's what he would do. Because you don't want to throw it, because there wasn't in abundance, so you have today. So that's what you do. So basar badam, man, how were we fashioned? Berucho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The pasuk says that God took man, and it says vayipach be'apav nishmat hayim. God blew inside the nostrils of man the neshama, right? So God blew within us this wind. Of course, it's metaphorical. You know that God isn't physical, right? You all know that, right? You all know God isn't physical. Okay. So he blew within us this wind, and we came to life, right? So if God, who can blow within us the wind, right? If the glass manufacturer can blow the wind within a glass, and if it breaks, he brings it back. God, who blew the wind within us, if we break, Yani, if we're dead, if our bodies are dead, he can re-blow the neshama within us. In other words, the neshama, it starts out before we're alive in a place, whatever that place is called. Let's call it Olam HaNeshamot, the world of the Neshamot. Then he takes the Neshamot from that place. The Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah discusses it. It says, it's called this chamber where the Neshamot are, and he puts it within our body, right? The Neshama existed before it was in our body. You understand the point of the thing? The same way the guy making the glass, he's breathing, and he has breath. His breath is there before the glass is there. If the glass breaks, it's not a problem. He can do again the breath and put it in the glass. So our neshama is there before it was in our body. And therefore, even after our body dies, so our body's like a broken glass, no problem. Hashem will put the neshama back in the body. Right? So the neshama goes to Olam Haba. When the person dies, it goes back to Olam Haba. And then when it's time, he brings the neshama back from Olam Haba and he places it back within our body. You understand? So that's the idea of this mashal of Rabbi Ishmael. Very, very beautiful, no? Very, yeah.
Is it true that your neshama could be in someone else's body beforehand?
So you're referring to Gilgul Neshamot, I believe.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you my opinion, and I'm in a minority, meaning I'm putting it out there, I am in the minority, but I'm in a good minority because Harambam and the Goanim agree with me. Look, I studied the Gemara from A to Z, from the first Masechet, which is Masechet Berachot, Me'matay Korin, till the last Masechet. You look at Masechet Nida, right? Tamidei Chachamim Babim Shalom Ba'olam. That's the last sugya in the Gemara. And if you look at the Gemara, it doesn't mention Gilgul. That's the truth. I want to put it out there. So according to Harambam and according to the Geonim, the idea of Gilgul is a foreign idea, right? And it makes sense to me because you're responsible for what you do. You are who you are. You have your parents, you must respect them. You have your children, you have to raise them, right? That's who you are. You can't escape your reality. You're responsible for your reality. And the idea of Gilgul seems to be foreign to that concept. This is, no, one day you're here, one day you're there, one day you're... So, Harambam rejects Gilgul. I also reject Gilgul. I'm very happy with this idea that you have a neshama, like the Gemara says in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and God takes the neshama from the chamber and puts it inside that body. And Tahiyat HaMetim, when you come back, you're going to be the same person. Only Harambam says that we're going to be in a better shape, stronger, healthier, right? Living centuries, right? So we're going to be in a healthier state, right? I'm sorry.
To add on to that, what it said about for example, they clean up the glass and remake it into a new utensil. Can that also refer to reincarnation?
Right. So that's what he.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted to say. So it would refer to the idea that when God refashions us, he can give us a better physical state, but we're going to be the same identity. Same neshama, same idea. Meaning we're going to have, when Avraham Avinu was going to come back, he's going to know I'm Avraham Avinu. And when you come back, you're going to remember your father, and your father's going to remember you. You're going to have that same connection, right? None of that is broken. Reincarnation suggests no. Reincarnation says that it's all one big mishmash. No, it's not a mishmash. Again, I'm giving you my opinion on the matter. And again, I feel good about it because the Gemara...
So there is no Gilgul or there is Gilgul?
No, I don't believe in Gilgul. I don't believe in Gilgul. I believe in what...
Anytime it's going to be a new neshama the guy creates, he sends it down?
Exactly, there's a chamber. It says, the Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah says, En ben David ba ela ad sheyichlu kol haneshamot shebaguf. The Gemara says that there's a chamber up there, and God takes the neshamot from that chamber, and eventually there'll be no more neshamot in that chamber, and that's when it'll be like a new stage in humanity, let's call it. And those neshamot have an identity. So, for example, you had a father, you had a mother. That's your father and your mother. That's it. There's not going to come back as a different person or as a different entity. Now, the Ari, he has a book called Shara Gilgulim. he does. It's not Gilgulim. Everybody understands Gilgulim like reincarnation. It's a different thing. Not getting into what the Ari is talking about in Shala Gilgulim, but it's not reincarnation. It's something else.
Arizal?
The Ari, yeah. He has a book called Shala. He has the different books. So one of them is Shala Gilgulim. He has a book called Shala Ruach HaKodesh. He has many books. So in Shala Gilgulim, he discusses things which have to be understood correctly. That's why not everybody is supposed to study Kabbalah, and there's some things that, but not reincarnation. No to reincarnation. Yes?
I guess I want to piggyback on that, and I want to ask another question, but I think it's a very convenient excuse, if you want to call it that, when people say that, how can we justify kids dying at such early ages?
Right.
And a lot of the rabbis and a lot of the talking heads say that these are really Gilgulim. They had a very short mission in life to complete, and therefore they needed to fix something, and therefore, I guess the classic example is Rabbi Akiva and Ramchal.
Right.
The first 40 years, he really didn't know how to read and write.
Yeah.
Ramchal really died at 40, 39, whatever. Yeah. So he was a correction, and
I have an understanding of what that means. I don't want to get into it, not because it's not a good question. Okay. But I do have an understanding of what that concept is about. And there is a connection between different neshamot. There's no question about that. I've seen that. That's correct. The real Kabbalah discusses a certain connection. But I would just say the following. We saw insane atrocities. Nothing in my mind, being a human mind, can explain to me the atrocities that took place. I'm not going to pretend like, I feel like sometimes when we try, I respectfully, I know everybody's Hashem Shamayim, so I can disagree with people and love them and respect them immensely. I feel like to a certain extent it trivializes. I'm not going to say Chazat, these babies that died, Elohim Yishmor, what they went through, what their parents went through, it's unfathomable. It's just, I guess the lesson is when the Torah says Timchei et Zecher Amalek, I guess there's a reason. I guess the Torah was right. Right. I mean, that's all. But I have no explanation. I'm not even gonna try to. Like the Holocaust of 6 million. Elohim Yishmor. Why? There's a 7. I can't even.
So it's like or hell, or you go to Gehinnom, or you go to Gan Eden. That's it.
Oh no.
There's nothing in the middle.
Yeah, no. So there is in the middle, because a person, for example, can go to Gehinnom for a little while.
11 months.
Kaparat avonot, maximum 12 months, maximum. And then he goes to Olam Haba, maximum.
That's it, nothing common.
No, that's it, exactly. That's right. And again, I'm telling you, this is my opinion, but I follow Harambam, the Geonim, the Gemara. Very simple. And it makes sense. You want, when you, Bezat Hashem, you have a long life here. But when you go to Olam Haba, you want to see your parents, you want to see your grandparents, you want to see...
It depends if you like them.
But meaning, you are who you are. You don't want to lose. You don't want to just take away your memories, and wipe everything out. You want to, sorry.
Doesn't Harambam hold that hell and heaven isn't time bound also? So how would that be?
Wait, so I don't know if it's not time bound. Hell and heaven? Yeah. There's an experience. The experience there is different than here.
That it was created when you were born and when your soul was created, not really after you die.
Repeat yourself.
That your status, not your status, but your soul is created. Like you had a stat. Yeah, I guess your status of heaven and hell was made from the moment you were born.
Right. So we know that when Hashem created the world, He created the Satan and the Malach HaMavet. That was part of the creation. So there was already Gan Eden, there was already Gehinnom, there was Olam Haba. Correct. But prior to our existence in our body, we weren't in hell. We were in Olam HaNeshamot. It's called the Guf. And then God brought us here. Now, after we live in this world, God will make a decision based on our actions. Where do we go? So we hope that even if we're not tzaddikim gemurim and we have to suffer a little, let it be temporary. But eventually, we go to Olam Haba. So there is an experience of time, even in the world to come. There is an experience of time, right? Did I address your question? Because you look confused. I'm sorry.
Because the Rambam explains the idea of afterlife as your connection to God, pretty much.
Yeah.
So how would there be a distinction, or let's say, how do you go to hell and then heaven after? How would that be possible? It's just
because of time?
Based on your experience in this life, let's say.
Well, that's a good question. I don't want to know about how the experience is after I leave this world, till like, I hope I get there in a while and not now. Harambam says that there's some things that in this world we can't understand what Olam Haba is going to be. He brings a pasuk, Ayin lo ra'ata Elohim zulatech. We can talk about it, we can try to understand it, but ultimately when you get there, you'll see the feeling of being in Olam Haba. It's a special feeling, whatever that is, different than anything in this world. Last question, then we'll continue.
Dismissing Gilgulim.
Yeah.
When a person comes back, they come back to the same goof, and if so, what point in their life, since a person, let's say,
Right, Harambam suggests, and you get it to Hadamitim, you'll come back fully born, like in the prime of your physical self, right? So you figure out what that is. Is that 20? Is that 21? Is it, right? But you'll come back fully, fully grown, like Adam HaRishon was created fully grown. Okay, let's do a few more passages in the Gemara. Amar lehu ha'u minal de Rabbi Ameh. So Rabbi Ameh lived after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. He lived in Israel. He was the Talmid of Rabbi Yochanan. So this is about 3 generations after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And in Israel, he had the early Christians. They were called the Minim. And they used to try to argue with the Hachamim about the veracity of the Torah. So this meaning comes to Rabbi Ameh. And he tells them, he says like follows, you Jewish people believe that the dead will come back to life. But it doesn't make sense. The dead, they turn into dust. Did you ever see dust coming back to life? Let me give you an example what this is like. There is a king of flesh. I wanted to go build an unbelievable city for me, a big palace in a place where there is no water, where there is no soil. In Saudi Arabia now, they have this unbelievable project that they're putting up. Nome, yeah, it's Nome. Google that word Nome. It's an incredible thing that they're going to be building in the middle of the desert, right? In a place where there's no water, where it's arid. I don't know how they're doing it. It's going to probably be like $1 trillion, who knows how many trillions of dollars.
4 seasons, they claim.
What?
They're going to create 4 seasons
within this Nome, right? Including skiing, right? Unbelievable, incredible. So imagine the king of Saudi Arabia wanting to build this Nome project for me. Okay. And they build it. And then there's an earthquake, there's a sinkhole in the earth, everything gets swallowed up, right? Amar lehem, you saw what happened in Gaza today. They captured this Hamas stronghold, and it was in the middle of a neighborhood, and the entire neighborhood collapsed because they had the tunnels, underground tunnels were there, so that when Tzahal caught the stronghold and they blew up the tunnels, the whole neighborhood went into the tunnel. So it's like a huge crater. So imagine that you have this building or this Nome project, and it gets swallowed up by something. Right? Now they built it in a place where there was no water. They built it in a place where there was no soil, and yet they were able to build it. The king realizes what a difficulty it was for them to build it in the middle of the desert. He says, you know what? Go find a place where you have water, find a place where you have soil, and rebuild it for me there. Much easier project, right? Oh my gosh, this is too much. We can't do it. It's just Hajj. It's too difficult for us to build this project again. He got angry. The king got angry. He says, what are you talking about? When I tell you to build this Nome project in the middle of the desert, Banitem, no problem, you did it. Now that I'm telling you, build it in a place where there's water, where there's soil, where you have whatever you need. So the point being, when God creates man from nothing, he starts with nothing, and he brings us to man. And we're all like, yeah, we believe that God created man. So what is the great wonderment that we say, okay, we start with something and we come to man, right? So you see there's a logical fallacy in the way we think. We all believe that God is a creator, and yet when we say, how does Hatamiti make any sense? The answer is, well, how does creation make any sense? So creation, ex nihilo means there was nothing and now there's something. If that makes sense in your mind, and of course it makes sense in our mind, we believe that God is a creator, then the same God who created the world from nothing can create man from something. That's the answer of Rabbi Ameh to this mean. But then he continues, and he says, if you don't believe me, go to this valley. There's a type of marsupial. I forgot what it's called. It's in Australia. There's a type of marsupial that lives underground almost all the time. It's one of the rarest They hardly ever saw it. I don't know if they have any pictures of it or it's like a very rare to see. The reason it's so rare is because it lives underground all the time. So, what?
Is it a pangolin?
And it wasn't a pangolin. It had this weird name, but something like that. Something like that. Similar shape, similar body composition. Now this marsupial lives underground, right? So hasio basar v'hasio adama. It almost looks like it's half flesh, half earth. Lemachari shris. And then suddenly he comes out and you realize he's living above ground. He comes above ground, I don't know, once a year or whatever. V'ne'esa kulo basar. And it becomes completely flesh. Shemetoma lizman merubeh, ale lehar ur'eh. שהיום אין בו אלא חילזון אחד, למחר ידעו גשמים מתנהל כולו חזונות. Now, you might say that the Tahiyat HaMetim is going to be for a very short time. Not true. Go look what happens after the rain. So before the rain, the snails and the slugs, they dry up very quickly. So they need a moist environment. And then you see this in Israel, after the rain, suddenly you see slugs all over the place. You see this in certain places in the world where you have snails and slugs. After the rain, they all come out from underground and they're alive. What happened? Before there was no water, they needed to stay underground because if they dry up, they die. So they were under the ground. Now that it rains, suddenly the whole thing fills up with these snails and these slugs. So the same thing, when Hashem in the days of Tahiyat HaMetim is going to bring a special tal. The pasuk says, Ki tal oro talecha. God is going to bring a special dew from the atmosphere. It's going to fall on the earth, and that tal will rejuvenate our bodies. And when our bodies become rejuvenated, we'll come back to life. Now, the same way these snails and these slugs, they're there, they live, they exist. That's it. They're thriving. When we come back to this world, we will be alive. We will be thriving. We will be plentiful. So that's what the Rabbi Ameh is telling this mean. Okay. So now we're going to have a series of stories that took place. This is during the beginning of the Second Temple, in the days of Alexander the Great. This is even before the story of Hanukkah. So before the story of Hanukkah, the Jews returned to Israel. They built the Beit HaMikdash. Then Alexander the Great, he went on this war. Now it's very interesting. I want to tell you something about what's happening now in Israel. So people are saying this is a war about Israel, and it is a war about Israel, of course. But it's part of a global conflict between, on the one hand, the United States and the Western world, and on the other hand, Russia and its allies. And let me just explain to you a little about this, because this is related to what happened to Israel. So, Russia has a problem. Russia has a huge amount of vast land which can't be defended. Because it doesn't have, let's say, natural mountains. Let's say Switzerland. Switzerland has mountains. So the mountains defend Switzerland, so you can't conquer Switzerland. There's never a war. Russia has huge plain lands. And what happened is a guy in Israel, his name is David Pasig. I read his book in 2005. His book is called 2048. In this book written in 2005, which I read, he said that, I don't remember the exact year, he said by the year 2021, Russia will invade Ukraine. That's what he said in the book. And he said it's going to turn into a world war. So how did he know this? Okay, so let me explain to you. Because the demography in Russia is crashing. Much of the world, the demography is crashing. In Russia, it's crashing even more. They're not having enough children. And he did a study of how the demography will be by 2021, and he reached a conclusion that by 2021, they will need to go for a war against Ukraine, and then from Ukraine, they're going to go into Poland, Belarus, and other countries, because there is no way that Russia can defend itself because the population is so low and the landscape is so vast. It's indefensible. So he was right, by the way, obviously. I mean, he was off by a year or two, but he was right. Now, the West is aware of this. Now, why is America, I'm not getting into politics. I don't care if you want America to give Ukraine weapons or don't want them. It's your opinion. You're entitled to it, of course. I'm not preaching. Okay, I'm just explaining to you what's happened. Why is America giving Ukraine so much money? Okay, the reason America is giving Ukraine so much money is because we know that after Russia conquers Ukraine, they ain't stopping there. They're going to Poland. And after they conquer Poland, they ain't stopping there. They're going to go to Belarus and they're going to conquer the Scandinavian countries. The reason they're doing this is because their demography is so bad that they need to reach defensible borders. Russia is indefensible. Once you get to Scandinavia and that area of the world, you have mountains, you can defend it. That's what this war is about. So on the one hand, you have Russia. On the other side of the world, you have America and the European countries, which America, under the NATO treaty, is obligated to defend. Israel and Saudi Arabia are stuck in the middle. They were about to do a peace treaty. Israel and Saudi Arabia would have been a complete bulwark against Russia and Iran. Iran represents Russia in this part of the world, and that's why Iran stopped that peace treaty by attacking Israel through Hamas. That's what happened. So what's happening in Israel now is part of a larger geopolitical conflict. It's in fact, according to David Pasik, we're in the beginning of World War III. I think I agree with him. I do agree with him. So Israel is literally at the center of the world. It's pretty amazing. What's more amazing is that thousands of years ago, in the days of the second Beit HaMikdash, it was exactly the same situation. You had the northern kingdom, Syria and its allies to the north of Israel, and then you have the southern kingdom, the northern kingdom was the Seleucid kingdoms, and then south of Israel you had Egypt, the Ptolemaic kingdom, and they were always going over Israel to wage war against each other. Israel was again at the center of these wars, not because people wanted Israel, didn't want Israel, but Israel was a bridge that connected these different land masses. That's pretty amazing. Like God put us like at the center of the world. And you would say, what's the relationship with the Seleucid wars against the Ptolemies thousands of years ago and Russia and America today? But the exact same situation. Unbelievable. By the way, unbelievable, right? Like you see it. Okay. Now, what happened is there was an exception. Alexander the Great conquered everything. Alexander the Great conquered, all the area, obviously, of Greece, Macedonia. I mean, that was his already to begin with. Egypt, right? Ethiopia. Then he goes over Israel. He conquers all the northern countries. He reaches, I think, India. I think it was like some crazy age. I believe he was like 21 years old. So, like some nutty age. It was like crazy. 21?
I think so.
Yeah, 21. And then he died at a very young age. Okay. In the days of Alexander the Great, there was finally peace. Why was there peace? Because the world war ended. Why did it end? Because he conquered everything. Imagine America just conquers all of Europe and all of Russia and all of India. So at that point, like the war is over, right? So in the days of Alexander the Great, there was some peace in Israel because he was in charge of everything, and those wars ended. And when he died, the Greek Empire turned into four parts, and that's a different story. So now this is during the days of Alexander the Great. And the Gemara says as follows. There was a person called Geviha ben Pesisa. He was a brilliant Chacham. He was an amazing, you ever see, sometimes you have people who really know how to speak eloquently and they're great rhetoricians, right? He was a phenomenal rhetorician. So here's what happened. This early Christian, comes to Geviha ben Pesisa. It's not really early Christian because back then there was no Christianity, but this person who's a secularist, let's call him. Vai lechon, you people, you Jews, you're such right? Hayava, you ever hear Bill Maher? Mm-hmm. So, as a guy, I kind of have mixed feelings about him. He's a secularist, and he's always like blaspheming religion, and I'm like a little upset because he seems to be a smart guy, but he has a psychological, it's like a psychological thing. He needs to be insulting. So he compared the new Speaker of the House, who's Christian, to the nutcase in Maine who shot, there was a guy mass shooting in Maine recently. Mm-hmm. So apparently he heard voices. So he was mocking the new Speaker of the House who's religious. He hears voices, right, because we believe in God, to this mass shooter. So I say, like, it shows such anger. Like, is that the way to speak to people? Like, there's a certain norm, we always speak about microaggression. Like that's a pretty major microaggression, I would say, right? So you see there's a certain hostility to religion on the part of these secularists. And again, I actually feel bad for him because I think he's a smart guy. If he just got over his psychological issues, he might have been good, but he has a psychology. I don't know what happened to him when he was young. Doesn't matter. So you see it here in this conversation. This guy is angry. He says, you Jews, you're wicked. Vailechon. You people, you're all guilty, you Jews. You say that the dead people are going to come back to life. If you're alive, you die. It's not the other way around. You want to tell me a dead person comes back to life? I never saw a dead person coming back to life. So he flipped the table on this secularist. He says, you're saying we're guilty? You people are guilty. You don't believe that the dead are going to come back to life? If a person doesn't even exist, and this person who doesn't exist, suddenly he's alive, and he has a brain, and he has an experience, and he's an individual. There was nothing, and now there's a person there. If a person was once alive, he can't come back to life at some point? Okay, so that's the point of Geviah ben Pesach. So all these stories are looking at the same idea from a different angle, which is to say, you're all amazed at Tehiyat HaMetim, but you're not amazed at the very creation of man. The very creation of man itself is a wonder, right? Right? There was no man, and then there's man, right? So why would the idea of Tehiyat HaMetim amaze you? So you see the different Hachamim, they all had that same concept, right? Amale Hayevayakalit. So this guy, this Bill Maher, he gets angry. You're calling me a bad person? Well, you just called him a bad person. Why can't he call you a bad person? He got angry. Ikaimna ba'atina ba. So let me tell you what happened. Geviah ben Pesisai was a hunchback. He was a hunchback. Obviously the hunchback of Notre Dame. Geviah ben Pesisai was a hunchback. So this guy was angry. He says, you know what? You better be careful what you tell me. If you bother me, I'm going to kick you, and I'm going to fix your hump, right? Kick you so hard, I'm going to fix your hump. I'm going to kick you so hard that you're not going to have a hunchback anymore. He says, listen, if you fix my hunchback, I went to a lot of doctors, nobody can fix it. You're going to be a great doctor, and I'll pay you money to do it. That was it. I'll pay you, do it. Yeah, please, fix me. So that was the thing. One more story. Tanuna Bana. Okay, we'll do one more story. What time is it? The exact time?
9:26.
Yeah, 26.
Okay, 9:26? 4 minutes, perfect. Okay, we'll go to 9:30. Okay, this incident happened on the 24th day of the month of Nisan. Right, so it's a few days after Pesach. Pesach finishes on the 21st day of Nisan. This happens on the 24th day of Nisan. Itnatilu imusnaem Yehuda Mirushalayim. There were these goyim that lived in Israel. This again is at the same time of Alexander the Great. And something beautiful happened, and the goyim were asked to leave the Jews alone and to leave Israel. Here's what happened. When Alexander the Great conquered this area, there was a group of Africans that came to Alexander the Great, claiming that Alexander the Great should return Israel to them. What was the claim? He said, we are the descendants of the original Canaanites. Right? By the way, the Palestinians, I've said this before, they're not from the descendants of Avraham Avinu. They're not. They're not Bnei Ishmael. The Palestinians are Bnei Canaan, just so you know. All right? I mean, everybody says, they're the Ishmaelites. They're not the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites are Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. The Palestinians are the descendants of Canaan. Okay, nothing to do with Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu wouldn't. Listen, the Ishmaelim. I'm not saying there was always a picnic to be in the Muslim countries. We know it wasn't always a picnic, right? They were fanatics. I'm not saying this to praise the Muslims, but Lord Kedekach. Nah, this is something. This is just something different, right? Anyway, so these were the Canaanites. Palestinians, like today, they come to Alexander the Great, they say, Eretz Canaan Shelanu, Eretz Canaan belongs to us, we're the Canaanites. What is Eretz Canaan called? Canaan, we're the Canaanites, it belongs to us. Dichtiv Eretz Canaan Ligvulotah, the Torah even refers to it as the land of the Canaanites. Uchnan Avuhon De'anhu, and we are the descendants of the original Canaanites. Uchnan Avuhon De'anhu Insheh, Amal Lehu Geviah ben Pesisai LaChachamim. So Alexander the Great sends a letter to the Chachamim. He says, I want you to appear before me in my court, and these guys are saying that the land belongs to them. How are you going to answer them? Geviah ben Pesisai says, listen, let me go. I want to go. I want to go defend the Jewish people. Tenuni reshut be'elech. Let me go. Let me be the one who argues the case in front of Alexander the Great. If I end up losing the case, then tell Alexander the Great, we don't know this guy Geviah ben Pesisai is. We don't know how he got there. We never sent him. He's just a simpleton. Okay, you'll get a second chance to appeal. But if I defeat them, I don't want to take any credit. I'm not doing this for my honor. I'm doing it for the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. They said, okay, go. You'll do it. He goes to the court of Alexander the Great, and they're arguing. The land of Canaan is called the land of Canaan, and we're the Canaanites. Amalahem, Geviah ben Pesisai, he cross-examines them. He says, Where are you from? Where do you bring your proof that your Canaan belongs to you? Why? Says who? Torah. It's your Torah. We're basing ourselves on your Torah. He says, you believe in the Torah? Yes, we believe in the Torah. He says, perfect. So we can all agree that Torah is a basis for this trial. Yes. The Torah says Eretz Canaan. It belongs to us. Okay, no problem. He says, I'm also going to bring a proof from the Torah. Shene'emar vayomer arur Kenan. When Noach leaves the Teva, and you remember what happened with Ham, that he looked at his father's nakedness and he was mocking his father. What did God say? What does the Torah say? Arur Kenan. These people are cursed. The Canaanites are cursed. Eved avadim yelei Achav. No, this is going to be the slave of slaves. But I'm not saying this to be mean. Part of the Palestinian problem, you know what the part of the Palestinian problem is? Nobody wants them. Nobody wants them. America has been begging Egypt, let them into the Sinai Desert so Israel can complete its mission in Gaza and there'll be no civilian casualties or less civilian casualties. They refuse. Nobody wants them. Egypt says in the Doze, go to any Arab country, let the Palestinians in. No, they want to let them into America. No, they don't want them in America. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants them.
Isn't Jordan 75% Palestinian?
The 75% Palestinians and the king of Jordan, you know how many times they tried to kill him and they tried to kill him. He doesn't want them, but there's nothing he can do. So he relies on Israel to give him intelligence information, right, to help protect him from the Palestinians. And then, of course, he insults Israel for being God knows what. Okay.
The Jordanian king actually relies on his money.
Of course. What do you think? The guy would have been killed? By the way, Syria, they had Palestinians there. I think he massacred. I think Assad massacred like 18,000 Palestinians in like a short amount of time. Nobody wants them. Eved avadim yel echab. What the Torah says. Eved shekana nechasim. Let me ask you a question. Okay, so now that we established that you guys are slaves of the rest of humanity, right? What happens if a slave, according to Jewish law, buys property? Eved lemi, unchasim lemi. Who does the slave belong to? And who does the nechasim belong to? It belongs to the master, right? So if you say that you're relying on the Torah, fine, we'll rely on the Torah. The Torah says that you are the slaves of your brothers. We are the older brother, Shem. So you say Israel belongs to you? Wonderful, it belongs to us. Now another thing, the Torah says you are slaves. I don't remember you working for us. The centuries now, the Noach left the Teva. You should be our slaves. You haven't been our slaves. You should be working. Where's the money? Give us something, a compensation. You haven't been working for us all these centuries. The guy say you have to. Alexander the Great says, give him an answer. Number one, Israel belongs to the Jews, obviously, but number two, you have to pay them. You have to pay them. Pay them the money. So he said, listen, we need 3 days. Let us come back in 3 days. They were looking in the Torah, they find the pasuk, nothing. They ran away. They didn't show up in court. They ran away. They left all their land, all their fields, all their vineyards. The Jewish people walked into the vineyards, walked into the field. It was Shenat HaShemitah, it was the 7th year where people don't work, and suddenly they had an abundance of food. Right? So it was a beautiful Geulah. That's why the 24th of Nisan is considered a happy day on the Jewish calendar, because that was the day when Alexander the Great ruled in favor of the Jews against these Palestinians or Canaanites, and said that really the land belongs to the Jews, and they all had to run away. Inshallah, we should have the same type of Geulah very soon. We need God's help in this. Rabbi Hanania ben Akashya Omer, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל לפיך, הרבה להם תורה ומצוות, שנאמר, אדוני חפש למען צדקו